Before we get started, Abe, I just want to let everyone know, thank you for coming on tonight to join us for Abe Downs' presentation. Their mics during Abe's presentation. And I will also implement the chat function so that if you have any questions, you can type in your questions and then I'll read them. When Abe's done with his primary presentation, I will unmute the mic so that you can verbalize, and we'll have a question and answer session after Abe's done with his primary presentation. So without further ado, please welcome Abe Downs.
Hey guys. Like one thing though, Bart, you need to make me a host so I can share my screen.
Okay, let me do that. Okay, I'm changing the host. I may have to reclaim that later, but for right now. The only other downside, Abe, is I might have to ask you to make any late admittees to allow them to come in. But right now we're good. Or no, actually, you'll see. I won't see them on my screen. You'll only see them on yours now that you're the host. See up there at the participants.
Let's see here. I'm new to this. If you'll see, everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, guys, for joining me tonight. Hope everybody's well. Kind of a weird way to do a presentation, but yes, this is the times we're living now. Bart said, I think I know a lot of you. I'm Abe Downs with Great Northern Fly Fishing from Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And I primarily fish the Wisconsin River. For the most part, we're fishing smallmouth bass and muskie, a few pike mixed in here and there. We do we use drift boats and rafts in Wisconsin, a few other rivers around the area. You know where Stevens Point is? That's where we're located. So you've probably seen this before. This is just a map of where the DNR website you can go on to and look up. I looked up where muskie water was. So anytime the DNR studied muskie, they map it and do any kind of study they have. It's located in their website. But you can see a lot of the river systems start to pop up. So this is, you can see muskie all over the state. And where you have muskie, most of the time you have smallmouth bass too. So they pretty much tie themselves together. Like I said, primarily I'm doing the Wisconsin River. There are some other smaller rivers that I do in northern Wisconsin that flow into Wisconsin, like the Tomahawk River. I do the Flambeau River that's further to the west, kind of associated with the Wisconsin River. There's a lot of other little rivers around that have smallmouth in them also that you can, walk and wade. You don't have to load them. Kind of look around. Pretty much any river in northern Wisconsin, you get down far enough, you're gonna find smallmouth bass. Lots of times the rivers up here start out as trout streams, if they're small enough, and then if you go down far enough, you're gonna hit smallmouth bass. That's the Wisconsin right there. You see it pretty much goes from the top of the state all the way down to the Mississippi River, where it winds up dumping into the Mississippi right around Prairie du Chien area. I estimated Alan Sherman's coming in now, I guess.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Hey, Alan.
Wisconsin, I always tell people the Wisconsin River is two rivers in one. If you fished up by me, you probably know, you're seeing a lot of rapids, big boulders. There's no sand at all, but get down below, just out there by about 50 miles, you're gonna start seeing sand along the banks of the Wisconsin River. That's from all the ice ages that we had to push all that top soil down that way. So it's all sand all the way down, basically from the dells down. Right there is Stevens Point. Pretty much all the way up from Stevens Point, all the way up to Merrill, and all the way up to the top is prime water for smallmouth, bass, and muskie. These are all stretches that float, Rhinelander section, Tomahawk sections, Merrill's right around Merrill, and even north of Rhinelander. So I was talking about before, basically, as the further north you get, the substrate in the bottom of the river gets larger, so there's a lot more boulders. And some of you fished with me up on the Hat Rapids section, and you can recall all the big boulders sticking out of the river, some size of cars almost. And with that, there's a lot of targets to hit. So pretty much anywhere you see a boulder, that's a great spot to find fish. Here's a few pictures from past years. That guy there had an unfortunate accident with a muskie fly his buddy put into his face. Luckily, it's barbless. And about an hour later, he hooked that girl. As far as muskie go, they're pretty much native to the Wisconsin River, and they've kind of spread out a little bit. But from Stevens Point north, they're primarily naturally reproducing fish. If you go south of Stevens Point, there's some natural reproduction, but a lot are put in there by clubs in the DNR. You can see there the distribution of muskie throughout the state. It's kind of expanded from this map here, but you can see the Wisconsin River basically goes all the way up. Original range right up at the top here, and then further down south at where they start to migrate down to, and they're doing some natural producing down further south, but for the most part they're still put and take basically. The DNR classifies everything for muskie by categories and classifications. Basically, all that means is that A1, which is what we have up here, and A2, that's all naturally producing fish, and then the categories are, the class like A1's big fish, basically it's trophy water. A2 is, there's smaller fish, but there's more fish to be had. So basically what we have up here is just, it's all class A water for both smallmouth, bass, and muskie. If you haven't been up here to fish on the Wisconsin, they used to be called one of the hardest working rivers in the world because they had so many dams along the way. We have 25 hydroelectric dams, and to go with that, the reservoir is behind those. But pretty much everywhere I fish, I'm fishing between two dams. So you start below a dam and you wind up above a dam. It's just the way it is in Wisconsin. Even in some other rivers in the state, there's, a few dams here and there. So basically, if you're fishing by yourself, dams are a great spot to go and poke around because they're fish concentrating areas. They can't go anywhere else. So lots of times you have deep holes by dams, as well as nice structure along the bank. So you can go there by yourself and do a lot of wade fishing if you need to. I prefer floating because you get a lot more areas, but you could poke around a dam on your own and spend a whole day and do quite well. Wisconsin's very target rich, as I said before, a lot of rocks and a lot of spots for fish to hide. And unlike the lower Wisconsin River, where it's constantly changing because of the sand. The upper Wisconsin doesn't change at all because those rocks are there all the time. You know, fish are going to be behind the same rock year after year. Whereas in lower Wisconsin, the fish kind of go with they go with structure, but the structure is changing all the time at the bottom of the river because it's so sandy. Here's a view of what's like up by where I fish. You see all the rocks. You know, this is a pool on the very bottom of the screen here that we'll drop into and anchor up. And we've pulled 10, 12 smallmouth out of this little area before. So it's kind of it's very target rich, but you have to really watch out what you're doing when I float it, because you could spend 4 hours and a quarter mile if you wanted to, because there's so many spots the fish be hiding. As well as the rocks, we have a lot of timber in the water from fallen trees. Every year there's something different. A lot of fish relate to that also. So if they're not by rocks, they're going to be by some kind of structure. Good thing about the river and the structure itself, you have a lot of shade, which the fish will relate to also. So if you're not finding them on one side of the river, you switch sides, and lots of times they're going to be on one side or the other. For bass fishing, I used to use a 7-weight rod, but now I'm using 8-weight rods, with a floating line primarily. Sometimes I'll use a sink tip. I went from 7 to 8-weight rods because 8 weights have a little bit more backbone to it. And you get into a big fish in some of the sections of the river where you might have some pretty good current, they'll double that rod right over, especially if you're a 19, 20-inch fish. Muskie, I primarily use 10-weight rods with the intermediate line for the most part. Very rarely do I use a full sink. I used to use a 60-pound fluoro bite guard leader, but I went to a fluoro leader with a wire, end in the wire with a snap on it now. I lost a few fish with the fluoro. Basically, when you're looking for fish, I always tell people that fish like to have their bedrooms next to the kitchen. So their bedroom being the rock or tree or whatever, and the kitchen is what's coming right by the bedroom. So they can sneak out, get a bite to eat, and go back to the bedroom and feel safe. See a lot of spots like these along the river where there's like little back eddies with the debris in it. And if you hit this right in the later in the summer, those fish are going to be held up underneath a lot of that scum, and you can just throw a popper in there and give it a couple twitches, and you'll get a big explosion out of it. A lot of spots along the river. Later you get in the summertime, the water gets lower, you get these foam mats that form behind tree branches where there's not a lot of current. And there's been times where that foam is like an inch thick or 2 inches thick, and lots of times that's where you're gonna find some of your biggest bass. You can throw that popper on top of the foam mat. Lots of times they'll throw it on there, let it sit, and you'll see that mat go up and down because that fish knows there's something there to eat, and he's like doing circles trying to figure out where it's at. And you make a little twitch, and the whole thing just explodes. As well as the rocks, we also have a lot of grass along the banks, which is nice because if you have some higher water, those fish will tuck back up against the bank and kind of back up into those grassy areas to hide, to get out of the current. And that's where you're going to have your least amount of current in high water times. So they can just kind of sit in there, wait for the conveyor belt of food to come by and grab a bite to eat. There's a lot of rapids where I fish also. This is on the Hat Rapids section below one of the main rapids. And these are great spots to just go and post up and drop an anchor and kind of sit out from the main current scene and just start working that swinging flies. Lots of times those throw a fly out and we strip it in, and not until that fly straightens out with the current will that fish hit. And you can find these are like fish magnet areas because you have bait fish getting on the main current too. So you have, the primary target species, bass or muskie, just kind of hanging out waiting for other stuff to come out of the current and they feed. Just like a trout stream, it's a typical riffle pool run section of river. We don't have a lot of spots where it's, the same gradients all the way through. So you have a lot of different gradients going on, especially on one of the upper stretches. You have little rapids here and there, and followed by a pool. And if you're not finding them in the pool area or along the bank or the main section of the pool, you're going to find them up in the riffle feeding, especially at dark, right before dark. Certain time of the year, you'll get a like a caddis hatch going on, and they'll be right up in the riffle, picking caddis off the top. There's some musky flies there. One thing I like about musky flies, they also catch big bass. Some of the biggest bass we've caught are on musky flies. Techniques that we use, it's either a popper, and you have popper with a dropper. If you're just right time of year, you're trying to figure out if they're still feeding underneath or they're starting to look up a little bit. Very rarely do I use a tandem streamer rig. It's kind of a pain to cast. Dead drifts sometimes work really good, especially if you're sitting along that area where you're below a rapids and you're off the main current. You can dead drift a streamer through there and get a twitch here and there, and they'll just hammer it. Kind of play around, see what works. Sometimes one thing is not working, you just kind of change up the retrieve or add a little twitch here and there, and then you'll find something that works. Here is a video of one of the areas that I fish. I'll start that probably about 4 or 5 minutes, I'd say. You see some of the rocks are pretty big. That's all wild rice right there. The rest of it's just some pictures. That's pretty much all I have for the presentation portion. I run through some of those. As you see, most of these fish are very dark. We have our water is very tannic, so the fish wind up being dark for the most part. That's it for the most part. If anybody has any questions,
You can go ahead and, if anyone has any questions, go ahead and unmute your mics and feel free to ask Abe anything.
I got one. How does the locations or where you're at or where in the river, how does that change as the season goes on?
for the most part, as the season goes, they're pretty much going to be in the same spots all the time. Even in the summer, early summer, all the way through the fall, they're going to be located by those rocks. Sometimes you're going to find them, depending on current. Really, what changes things if you have heavy current, or if you have a front come through, they're going to kind of get a little bit deeper off that first drop. You're going to find some fish, hanging in that deeper water, so I have to pull back and start working a little bit slower and use some bigger flies to get those fish out of there.
I mean, are these fish transferring from one part of the river to another, like say really early or really late in the year?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, they do migrate. Our fish, about, I don't know, the second week in September, they start to move out. And early in the spring, you'll have fish that are moving back in. So, if you're fishing April, you might have some warm days and you're gonna get out. You might fish one part of the river and not find, any fish at all, or if you're a few fish. And then you go further down, you're gonna find some fish held up, in some shallow areas, the lower part of the river. But yeah, they migrate from their wintering holes further down the river back up into the main river. Starting in, you can even start finding fish move if it's warm enough in March. But it's not like I think you guys have fish hanging out in the river in the same spots all the time, right?
I don't know. It depends. It depends upon the river. I mean, like some rivers, they just the smallest, slow rivers, they just leave. Like the Kish,
Yeah.
They leave. You can't. If you go early in April, upper sections of the river, they're not there. You have to wait until May until they get there, and then very often, and by the end of sometime in the fall, depending upon what the weather does, they'll leave and they're not there. So
right. Yeah, if they up by us, and if they have a good section they can migrate, we'll go miles.
The whole river is open for game fish. You don't have to wait for the May opener. If you're fishing in April,
a while back in some sections, it's different by section. Some sections are still locked up until the opener. Some aren't.
okay. Are muskie available to fish for early or no?
Not really. I mean, technically, you can't.
It's closed.
It's closed,
Okay.
but you'll get some bycatches on bigger smallmouth flies.
Do they look at you funny when you're casting 8-inch flies for bass? when it's not muskie.
I for the most part, we don't see a lot of people up in the stretches I fish.
Yeah.
So, every once in a while you'll see a boat here and there, but it's kind of you're kind of penned in there. If you don't have the right boat, you're not going to go down the section.
At different parts of the year, do you have different sizes of flies? Or are there certain color patterns that work at different times of the year?
Muskie, we'll start out with a muskie, smaller first part of the year. And as you go through the year, I don't fish muskie after the end of July. Usually it starts to get too warm, or even sometimes mid-July. And then I'll pick it back up in the fall. That's when you start using real big flies because they're putting the feed bag on for the winter time. Smallmouth, I kind of play around with size, and we'll take a medium-sized fly some days, and some days midsummer they want a smaller fly for whatever reason.
Are you using more bait fish patterns early and maybe more crayfish patterns later, or it doesn't matter?
I use primarily bait fish patterns. I'll use crayfish patterns here and there, but our rivers are so they're relatively shallow, so they're going to key in on you. Put a bait fish in front of them, they're going to take it.
When the fish are in the riffles and feeding on caddis, what flies are you using then?
I'll still use a streamer, just throw a streamer in. And they'll be in there eating, so they're just keyed in on eating. So if you throw something by them, they're opportunistic.
Okay. That makes it easy.
Hey Abe, can you get out of the computer screen? I'm just seeing your computer screen right now. I don't know if everyone else is or not, but
let's see here.
I was just going to type that. I almost got it done, and then Bart said something.
I don't know how to do this. Yeah.
Click back on Zoom.
Or can you just throw it to the side? I don't know.
Here.
If not, don't worry about it.
yeah, it's still working. But Abe, when is your there we go. When is the primary fishing season for you? When does it run from? When does it begin? And I guess
for the most part, I'll start taking people out first part of May, and go all the way through for smallmouth all the way through very first part of September.
How many people can you accommodate? And what's kind of a typical?
Well, I run a drift boat or a raft, so two anglers per boat. I have multiple boats, so at times we can do multiple boat trips. This year's a little bit different. My son just graduated college, so he's an RN now. So he's still trying to figure out his schedule. So I have Hunter Dorn. We work together quite a bit, and we're doing a lot of group trips this year. But yeah, we've had, we're doing we've done 3 boat trips, 4 boat trips. Those type of things we have to, have enough lead time to put that together.
That's what 2 people per boat, right? So
yeah, 2 people per boat.
Yeah. And then you're based in Stevens Point, right?
Yeah.
And if somebody were to book a trip with you, would they meet you? How would that work? Would they come up to Stevens Point and then go from there? Or
well, before COVID, I have people stay around Stevens Point. And they just jump in the truck with me and I get a shuttle and go up north. But since the COVID hit, I've been meeting people up north. I advise them to stay up there, or they can stay around here and just follow me up there. Found a lot of places.
Yeah.
It's not very far where we go.
Yeah,
But
Stevens Point is a nice place to stay. There's good restaurants, some good breweries. It's a good place to.
There's a lot of
You
breweries.
can get there early in the evening, late in the afternoon, early evening, and you can have a good time there and fish the next day in the morning.
That's a nice town.
Yeah.
How long a drive is it to Stevens Point from Chicago?
So it depends on where you're at. So I always figure about 4 hours, four and a half. It's not real far, but it's not something you want to come up and then turn around and drive back the same day. That'd be a little tough.
Yeah. Probably.
Yeah. Well, when I fished with Abe, it took about, we drove and launched about an hour north of Stevens Point. So, if you drive back at the end of a long day of fishing, depending upon where you go in the Chicago area, it's a long enough drive if you're tired to make sure you stop and get enough coffee.
Yeah, if you have two guys, you can probably do it. But if you're by yourself, it'll be a tough road. But there's a lot of options up here. If you come up and fish, what I usually do is I send people out like an info sheet that has accommodations that they can check out, and then recommended stuff to bring along and whatnot. So there's some pretty nice restaurants and hotels up here you can get into.
Did you have a lot of openings last year with the COVID? People cancel out on you?
Yeah, I had quite a few cancellations, but then a lot of people picked up towards the end.
Hopefully it'll be better this summer. It looks like.
Oh, yeah. We're gonna stir crazy.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Hopefully everybody can get their vaccination and get out fishing.
Was there
guidance?
What's that?
Was there a lot more sport fishing locally by you?
Yeah, actually, I've had guys come up that spin fish. They had trouble finding bait, plastics and whatnot, because the stores were just out.
Yeah. Yeah, the rivers down here got hit pretty good too.
Yeah.
Are you guiding all 7 days?
Yeah, I got 7 days. So I got a lot during the week.
If someone wants to reach you, Abe, what's the best way to contact you? Did you hear that? I'm sorry.
You can check out my website, or you can just email me at abe@greatnorthernflyfishing.com.
GreatNorthernFlyFishing.com. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, abe@greatnorthernflyfishing.com.
Or whenever people receive it in the
Also on my
blast
website, there's a
What's that?
that?
I said, or the ISA Bronzeback Blast that we send out promoting our events, all the ads and stuff in there are clickable. It'll direct people right to your website.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, so my testimonial with Abe, I fished a couple times. I fished a couple years ago with my daughter, and he's very good with beginner fly fisher people. Got my daughter into some fish with both fly rod and with spinning tackle.
Yeah, you got a pretty big fish that day, one of the days.
Yeah. Well, actually, we fished on a day when the bite was difficult. We caught fish, but
yeah.
But I was fishing the bank, and this is very memorable, fishing a bank and not paying attention to the rocks in the middle of the river, because this part of the river didn't have a ton of big rocks in the middle of the river, that were passing a rock. And Abe said, cast it there. So I was able to flip the fly from one side of the boat to the other, right behind the rock, and we nailed a 20-incher.
Yep.
Which was pretty satisfying for both of us, because it's not all the time when the guy tells a client to do something, they actually do it and execute. So
That's always nice.
It doesn't always happen. Doesn't always. I mean,
No.
I miss it all the time.
I think Joe had that. Right, Joe?
Yeah, no, we had a great time. I missed a lot of fish, or missed a couple. My
Yeah.
brother landed a good one, 48-inch muskie.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, really good time. Hey, Abe, maybe I'm the last one to the party. What type of popper dropper do you throw? Can you describe that a little bit more?
Popper dropper, just throw a standard, a decent sized popper, but nothing really small. Something that you can load the smallest little streamer you can manage with a little woolly bugger or something. Nothing that's going to drag the popper down. So you take about 2 feet of fluoro or whatever you want behind the main popper and cast it out. Lots of times fish will take that dropper, especially before they start looking up during the year. Lots of times, like, I don't know if anybody's ever fished redfish with a popper, above a shrimp. Use that popper and make a lot of noise. Lots of times I think they hear that noise and will come and see what's going on at that dropper.
It's like a bubble rig on conventional fishing then.
Yep.
Okay.
You ever get doubles doing that?
Yep.
Yeah, that's fun. That's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Sometimes it works out sometimes, but lots of times it's hard to get a good hookup after one fish is on.
Well, if anyone's never caught a 20-inch smallmouth, you'll have a great opportunity to catch one with Abe, because they're to be had on this river. I know.
Yeah, Bart had multiple 20s, like multiple casts, and like a 50-foot section.
Yeah, that was incredible. That was absolutely incredible, and something I'll never forget. That's for sure.
That's fun.
Keeps me coming back.
Even though you hit a deer,
That's right. Yeah, even though I crushed my truck, but with a deer, but it was worth it. Kind of like the guy that had the fly in the cheek, I guess, right?
yeah.